Hey, welcome to your Share Pamphlet. My name is Rob, and I'm the host of this one-man show, coming to you every Monday, 6 a.m. UK time. And today, I'm back to review albums, finally, and it's very actually interesting that in my previous episode I talked about how, it was mostly about movies, to be fair, but I also sort of gave a bit of a commentary on how this year has been quite flat in terms of entertainment, and how culture is getting progressively more fragmented the more time goes by, basically, right? So it's very fitting that now I'm providing you with a review of an album that I think is actually contains some of the best music, or at least is one of the most cohesive projects and most interesting projects that I've heard in a long while. And it's sort of, no one expected this to happen, or at least in my predictions, I didn't even expect Lily Allen, who, by the way, the episode is about, but I didn't expect her to come out of nowhere and deliver us an album that is so compelling and so interesting. And I think no one sort of knew that this was going to happen either, because she recorded and she wrote basically this album in 10 days, which is like insane. On the one hand, I think you might expect it to be rushed or something, but because of the how to say, like, the content of it, the content is quite emotive and very, very sad, I would say, and very quite frankly, visceral in a way. It's a topic that is quite difficult to properly rationalize at the same time. I think this album sort of feels like her working through her own pain and her own emotional status, right? And it sort of ends actually in a pretty good note. It gives you some sort of closure to the whole problem at the crux of the album, right? Which is very interesting. And the outcome of this is also, I think, personally, one of the best track lists in terms of order and storytelling, in that sense, that we've ever had in any albums in a long time. Like, I'm talking about thematically and topically, in that sense. Each track adds to the story and adds to the previous track and gives clarity on the previous track, which is honestly fresh, and what really I think is captivating a lot of of the listeners, but also the critics. I think this album received a 88 or 89 on Metacritic or something like that, which is incredible, and I do firmly believe it is well deserved and super interesting, honestly, because it is a one of a kind sort of album, I think. Now, what is the topic of the album? Because I've been vaguely talking about it, but the topic of the album is basically her split from David Harbour, who was her husband for the longest time. They've been together for so long. I'm talking about, I think, to the point where they have, basically kids. They've had kids, teenagers, who are now teenagers. So you can imagine it's a long relationship. And I think it would be that already alone. I think the split between two people, adult people, in a sense, a marriage, the dissolution of a marriage, is already something quite visceral of a of an experience itself. I would say, it really must destabilize your entire comfort zone and everyday life and everything in general, just your emotional stability. But what really, I think, brings the extra novelty, I guess, this album, is how this marriage was revealed, that this marriage was through the album itself, that this marriage was quite, you know, broken because of I don't want to necessarily call it cheating, but it is a form of cheating. Actually, I would say I'm going to backtrack and say it is a form of cheating. How cheating really played a big part of this in a modern setting. That's, I think, what's the really interesting part about this album, is that it really explores modern relationships and modern marriages, and the idea of non-monogamous relationships and non-monogamous marriages specifically, which is sort of like a trend that is not a trend. I'll call it a trend, actually, yeah, or at least a more like open form of marriage that has been quite has become quite common, I think, especially, I would say, between very famous people, because of the nature of their jobs and everything else, but also I think in general weddings and relationships have been evolving constantly, of course, over the years. But polygamy is something that is relatively new as a concept to our, society in that sense, at least in terms of acceptance of it and a positive spin that we've recently had in the recent years. So you see a lot of polygamous relationships and open marriages and all that stuff going around everywhere. And this album sort of contends with the idea, mostly, I think, of that, and how it can be fair at times, but also how it falls apart, and how it's a very difficult form of relationship that can never work unless the two parties involved, specifically the two people coming to an agreement of the sort, are fully committed to the idea and are clear about their boundaries. And I think she, in this album specifically, and as I'll show you while we go through the tracks, I think in this album she really makes it clear that she's not necessarily hung up on the fact that it was a polygamous situation that evolved, but more so his behavior towards it, and his lying attitude, I guess, and his jaded approach to this, and how he sort of dictated a lot of these conditions, I guess, part of the marriages that were not even respected by himself in the end. They were even, breached multiple times by himself, and sort of how, very weird and unbalanced power dynamic she was in this marriage, and how sort of course reflects to the nature of their relationship, but also in general about herself. And she talks also about a lot about her own flaws, and why this dynamic, apart from, of course, the bigger issue of him lying and cheating and all that, about also how they are fundamentally incompatible. And I mean, I want to make it clear that most of the album is quite if you've been through some situations of the sort, it is quite direct, and quite it can evoke quite a lot of sad emotions in that sense. And it's okay to, of course, not wanting to talk about any of this or hear about this if you're not interested or ready for this types of conversation. But I also want to say that I want to stress that it does end on a positive note, and while it takes the whole album to get there, like most of the album is a lot of rumination on the entire issue, it does end up with a good sort of ending, or at least an acceptable and a way forward, at least, for her to keep on going on, so yeah. I mean, for those of you who don't know, David Harbour, of course, is famously known for playing I personally don't watch. I've watched the first season of Stranger Things, and that's pretty much it. But he's, from what I remember, the adoptive father of 11, played by Millie Bobby Brown. And he also then starred in several other things, including Marvel movies. He is. He was in the Thunderbolts and all that stuff. He's the Red Guardian there, or whatever. And, well, of course, Lily Allen, you would probably know her a lot if you are into the music scene, specifically the British music scene. but she's a very well respected, I think, artist, specifically for her type of writing that is quite direct and quite blunt, and to the point where it's like funny, but also because it's so like harsh and so direct. Sometimes it's funny, but also at the same time very, very true. I guess very direct to the point. Like I'm talking about very specific, evocative terms that she uses that are very direct and very, sometimes swear words and all that stuff. Like she's very, very open and very direct with the way she writes, and that's what really made her famous, if I have to be honest. You know, um, and I think what's really interesting about this album as well, another added layer to this, is that she still carried on this sort of approach to her writing while discussing something that is quite the sensitive topic, and in a way that still makes it seem like you're really connecting with her emotionally. And I really mean it, in the sense that I really felt super sad when I was listening to this. I was really empathizing with her. She really, this is some of her, I think, most direct and best writing she's ever had. And all this while also coupling the album with like a sound that is quite interesting and diverse, and still accommodates this sort of like confessional songwriting that she's going for. There are some upbeats moments, of course, in terms of production. A lot of pianos, a lot of guitars. Some parts are like quite garage influenced. Some of them are quite reggae influenced. There's a lot of interesting flavors. There's a lot of interesting variety in this album. So yeah, that's another interesting element of the album. Also, I want to stress that this album came out on Friday, so while this is like my sort of review of the album, I guess it's not my final review, or like this is my initial, I guess, review. That's how I would describe it. So I've only had 3 days to listen to this, but I've been listening to the album nonstop, partially because I really care about this project and I want to like properly talk about it, I guess, but also because I truly find so many gems in the album the more I listen to it, and so I will keep on for sure repeat it. So if I say some of these songs are like my faves, don't you worry, and some are not, don't you worry that I think I actually can predict that some of the other songs will climb the ladder as well. But yeah, so the name of the album is West End Girl, and I love how when I first like looked at the name, it's like, what does she mean by that? And she immediately explains it to you with the opening track, which is the title track, West End Girl. Now, this title track perfectly sets the scene and sort of explains, like it brings you immediately into the focal emotional point of the album, right? So it starts off with like gives you a little bit of a recount or like a summary of what has happened in her life. So she moved to New York, then she started renting a place with him, and then they bought a house together, had kids and all that stuff. So she brings you up to speed, and then she brings you to the breaking point, I guess, of the relationship immediately, right? So after telling you about like the NY life that she had with him, she talks about this event, this turning point on the relationship, which is basically when she got offered a role to play the lead role, basically, for a play in the West End in London. So of course it entails that she would have to move to London and be there for the whole season, because if you know anything about theatre, the actors have to go on stage almost every night for a prolonged period of time. So that would mean that they would have to separate for a bit, because he would have to work with in the West End, and he would have to still pursue his own acting roles, of course. So now there's already a point of tension in this. She says that this, when she got this role, this is where everything started shifting, because she tells him about it and he is quite taken aback and offended by this in a way, because he would expect that someone like her, who is a singer, who has never acted properly in anything, would have to still go through the audition process, and she instead got the role straight up. So he's sort of taken aback by this. Sort of, I can sense there's a little bit of maybe jealousy there going on. I'm not entirely sure. There's an interview that's been circulating when she was on the red carpet, I think, for the theatrical release, where he was there as well supporting her, and he made some interesting comments. Complaining that he's had to play for so many, he played so many different roles like this, and she got it immediately or whatever. So there was already a sort of tension with that. And then, so she goes to London, she says in the song, like she recounts, this is sort of like a bit of a jazzy production to this song, which is really, really cute, but the topic gets very dark very quickly, because then the song goes into a full break, and you get an outro that is a spoken outro, right? Where she sort of reenacts a phone call that she has with him while she's in London, right? So she tells you that she's in London now, she's all alone, and she's, starting off this big journey, and, then she gets a call from him, and she reenacts the call, but you can only hear her voice, not his voice, or like a man's voice. It's just her speaking to the phone. You can hear what he's saying, so you can only sort of I can only guess what the topic is, I guess. And I at first thought the way it goes basically is that she's receiving some bad news from him, or basically that he's saying sort of that he wants to take a break or whatever with her, or that that wedding is over or whatever. Like not the wedding, the marriage is over and whatever. I thought of that at first, because there's nothing really, she doesn't really say much apart from saying that makes her feel really sad, and asking him how that would work and all that stuff, and it ends by saying love you and all that stuff, and then by listening to the rest of the album, you find out instead that he asked her right there and then to basically make the marriage an open marriage, and to basically allow him to sleep with other people. The outro, this spoken outro, the first time I heard it, I literally started sobbing, because it's just like you can hear in her voice how heartbroken she is by this news, and you don't even exactly know what it is, but you can sort of guess that it's something very bad and really immediately upsets her and sends her basically over the edge. So yeah, I really want to give her the biggest hug, because that was really brings you immediately into the focal emotional point of the album, right? Immediately you're in it. So now I love also how she sort of slowly reveals every piece of this, sort of the news that he broke to her, and how this sort of situation, open marriage, eventually develops, right? Because the next song that goes into the album is Ruminating, and it's quite, you can sort of guess what it is about, and it's perfect because it's she gets this call, and the song ends with the phone call ending, right? And you get into the next track, which is Ruminating, and it's basically the aftermath of the call, and the night after this call, right? It is production wise quite a beat, almost trap influence, I would say. Seems to be like the night after this call, as I said, and she can't quite sleep, and she keeps on ruminating about the presence of another woman in the relationship, in the marriage specifically. And so it seems all of this was done by phone. So they haven't had a conversation about this in person. He just called her, and they came to this conclusion. They came up alleged in this agreement. It's clear she's not up for this, I would say, from the song, and he's very unhappy. He asks her if it has to happen. Do you want to know? That's what he says. Like if this has to happen, like the open relationship, do you want to know? Sorry, if this has to happen in terms of him having sex with other people specifically, he asks her if she wants to know when it happens or whatever, and all that stuff. To which she proceeds to say over and over again in the song while she's ruminating, basically, what a fucking line. Because she it is a crazy question to ask. Like, it really throws you off, right? And so she keeps on saying what a fucking line, right? The song does sound like this thought that is festering in your brain, and something that's really bothering you so much that you cannot really get it out of your head, and you have to stay awake basically because you cannot go to sleep. And then the album progresses into this third track, which is called Sleepwalking, which is perfect because, again, she can't sleep. She's been ruminating about this issue, right? And it's one of my faves as well on the album. I really like this number. There's a bit of a guitar situation going on here, which is really cute as well. Great transition from previous song in terms of theme. It's all about how basically selfish David Harbour is basically in this whole situation. He won't stop talking. He won't stop calling her, and she's just sleepwalking basically at this point because of this. She says one of the best lines I liked it was "Been no romance since we wed." So she clearly says that this is not, of course, the first issue they've ever had. They've always had some issues, underlying issues, and then sort of like he tries to put their lack of chemistry on her. He tries to put some of these issues on her as well. When it's instead his extramarital relationships like really killed the chemistry to begin with. So little did she know, basically she's saying like little did I know that actually was the presence of so many different people that I didn't know yet about that really killed the chemistry to begin with. Here it seems like he's keeping her up by constantly calling her basically, right? And talking about their marriage. She wishes he would just like be satisfied with her instead of fulfilling his fantasies basically with different women. And then again, another favorite, we go into Tennis, which is really such a cool track. I think actually might be one of like if maybe my top track. I'm not, I don't want to say it, but maybe it is one of my favorite tracks ever on the album. And this is basically more like, they have agreed on this. Well, they've agreed that while she's away, he can sleep with other women, right? So she goes back. It seems like this song is like when she goes back home and she talks about like with her children and him coming home after being very absent basically, and then she gets access to his phone. This is how like the narrative of the song goes. He shows her basically a photo on his phone and she gets the phone and he gets immediately very wary of this, and once she gets his phone she finds out basically that he's seeing a woman and it's not in the terms that they've agreed on. So they only agreed through this song. You basically found out the only thing they agreed on was to, reluctantly for her, basically, they had agreed to have him sleep with other women, and he would have, with strangers, and he would pay for them, or that's it, like hookers basically. But through this, she finds out that he's seeing someone actually. Like it's not simply about sex, but he actually is going to playing tennis with this other person, and suggesting that again it wasn't simply a one night stand but a separate relationship altogether. And so she finds out also her name, which is Madeline. Madeline. So she wrote him an email when she gets to bed. She writes him an email basically about what she saw, and him basically he goes to her straight up while she's in her bedroom and starts arguing with her, making it all about her, that it was her fault and all this stuff. But in reality, he's the one who broke the rules they had set up for this open relationship, right? She says if this was just sex, I wouldn't be jealous. So she's sort of trying to say that she would have been okay if what happened was just sex and all that stuff. But I think that for her, the worst issue here is that he has broken her trust, and he's done more than actually what they had agreed on. And it's very, very also interesting in the song that throughout the song she keeps on asking who's Madeline in her British accent, throughout some breaks in the song she's like, who's Madeline? She says like as if she's asking him, who the fuck is Madeline? Oh, she actually says, I think, who the fuck is Madeline? Which is instead the name of the following track. Madeline, is such a creative song, I think, as well. It's such a it sounds like a Old Way West jewel song, when they go have a jewel in the sand, and they like in the Wild West and all that stuff, they face each other, the cowboy and the bad guy or whatever. So that there's a lot of that which really brings forward some immediately you think about conflict and two people facing each other, right? And it's perfect because it is actually in fact about exchanges between her and this Madeline, this woman who he was seeing. She raises concern about the truth, about, she says, like, basically, I cannot trust a word that comes out of his mouth, but also then she turns later on in the song and saying, I cannot trust a word that comes out of your mouth, like to the woman, but also, how do you trust anything that comes out of his mouth? So she's basically raising a lot of concerns about the truth and all that stuff. And again, the agreement seems to have been that he would only engage in sex with hookers for money, but it seems that she's not a stranger instead. That's what she said in the song. She sort of also sort of like recreates like text exchanges between them. Like she reads texts that Madeline sent her, sort of like her trying to defend him, like just Madeline trying to defend him, saying that their only thing is that they're having sex and that's it, there's nothing else going on, and saying that she was informed that Lily Allen was okay with this and all that stuff, and it's not entirely what's really happening, because what she knew was that he was just going to sleep with strangers, and that was pretty much it. But it seems here that this woman is not a stranger to either of them, actually, or to him specifically. Well, the biggest takeaway from this song is that she completely basically lost trust in him, right? That's just the breaking, like, the takeaway the major takeaway from the song. Then the album progresses with the following track, Relapse, and it's slowly become one of my other favorites as well. It's basically reflecting on how this whole situation almost pushed her to relapse on alcohol addiction. My favorite line in this track is, "I try to be your modern wife, but the child in me protests." Like, that's sort of that's the crux of the entire album, basically, that he wanted her to be this like modern wife in the sense of being this non-monogamous wife, but deep down the child in her protests, in the sense that protests because basically she's not, deep down she knows that she's not happy with it, and the true self, her true self, is not happy to be in this form of arrangement, right? And I really like that line. It's actually a very good line. Yeah, so it's such a good song. Sounds very UK garage. This one is actually very, very cool. I think it's the most interesting production moment on the album as well. Very, very cool. And then the album goes on to Pussy Palace, which is the song that seems to be getting the most attention at the moment out of the album, from everyone, sort of. This song is getting to the point, right? So she basically talks about how she realized that the biggest issue here is that he's sort of a sex addict. Like, the entire issue is not simply, like, it's just the underlying issue that he has, basically, is that he's just addicted to sex, and he's sort of like it's something that has been part of him specifically for a long time. And she basically talks about how she's back in her house, of course, and she doesn't want to see him, but she tells him to go to his apartment, where he basically had a separate apartment also in West Village in New York, and while they're talking, she says that she wants to get all of her stuff back and from this apartment that they had, and so she's on her way there without him being there, and she gets into his apartment and basically finds out about a bunch of other shit. The whole thing is she finds out basically that this apartment is a pussy palace instead of that's what she calls it, instead of what it was supposed to be, a dojo, right? A peaceful and uncontaminated place that it was only his, right? Instead of being that, it's actually a pussy palace where he would fulfill all of his fantasies and do whatever he wanted. So she specifically mentions that she found sex toys, hair that belonged to other women, of course, and a shoebox of handwritten letters from several other women, wishing that he was a better person, of course, and breaking contact with him and all that stuff. So very, very grim, very grim, very grim, very grim. The song continues perfectly, I think, the topic into 4chan Stan, which is another favorite of mine. after finding out basically about all of the stuff that was in his apartment, she goes back home and looks into his bedside drawer and finds receipts and other info about him buying bags to this specific woman. And it's alleged in the song that it's she keeps on asking, is it somebody famous, which sort of makes us feel that it is someone famous, maybe. So that's quite interesting. My favorite line in the song is the chorus, basically a refrain in the chorus. What a sad man is giving fortune Stan, which is basically like she's sort of calling him an incel, right? Smack cam, put him on smack cam, girl. Like I just this, she gets him. Like she really gets him in the sense of she really goes deep into like why he's such a troubled man. It's not simply about asking for a polygamous relationship, but it's more that he has underlying issues that are deeply rooted and they're quite disturbing as well. Like he just is addicted to cheating and to having multiple women at the same time, which is just fucking insane. And again, this veers now into the next track, which is Nonmonogamummy. Mommy as in like mother. Incredible wordplay, I think, in that sense, because this song is very much about that. She's he wants her to be this non-monogamous wife, right, that we already talked about slightly before. The track's production is quite reggae here. There's a feature on this and it's very, very cool, like the way it's like has a different flavor, I guess, to the album in terms of soundscape, and it's about basically how she forced herself to get into this non-monogamous situation, all to open up essentially more about why she accepted this agreement in the first place. And it was because basically she says at her core she is a people pleaser, and I think this is like lyrically, like thematically, it's one of the most honest songs. It's very, very interesting to see also her self-criticism in that sense. So very, very interesting. I think it adds quite a lot of depth and to the album in that sense. She also talks about how she tried to go on dating apps to find other man, so she tried to also step into this role of like a non-monogamous wife by also herself trying to expand the relationship between her and her ex-husband, but she kept on basically failing this because she deep down, again, as we explored in the previous tracks, doesn't really want this, right? And again, perfect continuation is Just Enough, the next track, which is essentially again about herself, how she lost all of her power because of this man. She feels old and used, and it's about him giving the bare minimum, just enough to keep her on hoping things will change, or at least go back to how they used to be before she found out. But she ends the line just enough, like she says, just enough hope to hold on to nothing, which is basically, her conclusion is that now that she found out, there's no going back, basically, because there's nothing to hold on to. Like, that's who he is. This is the person he revealed himself to be. And it's sort of I would say the lowest emotional point of the album, because it's just such a stripped back number, and it's really a lot of like self-reflection and how deeply disturbed this has made her feel, and it sort of feels like she's surrendering to this whole situation, saying there's nothing, I cannot fight for this anymore, there's nothing for me to fight for, because he just is, there's nothing for me to hold on to, right? And then a very creative song that comes next is Dallas Major, another favorite of mine. This like sort of her talking about this archetype that she sort of viewed herself as throughout this like phase. This woman in almost her 40s, who has to now go out on dates with strangers, and how she would present herself to. She asks, basically, she like tries to create this archetype that she could use to present herself to other people, to other dates, basically, specifically. Almost nearly 40, as a mom to teenage children, looking for some fun while her husband is working away. Used to be quite famous, and this goes from first person also to third person by the end of the song. Like she says, I'm Dallas Major, all that stuff. My name is Dallas Major, and it gets to the end to she they call her Dallas Major, all that stuff. So very interesting track. But also, I really like the production of this track as well. It's quite interesting. I think it's one of the other very cool moments here, very jazzy here. Super cool. I really like it. Again, one of my favorites for a reason. And it instantly clicked for me as well, this one, which was really, really good. Next track is Back For Me. And I think this is probably my least favorite track at the moment because it doesn't really add, I think, thematically a lot. Like, she just basically is asking him in his song why he won't beg for her. Like, she's sort of angry here a bit, asking for where did his empathy go while she's on, while she's on all of this pain. In all of this pain, he doesn't really care about her that much. And it samples that famous song that goes, "If you want me to stay, I'll never leave." It's the poppiest moment of the album, I guess, in that sense. But again, I don't think it really explores anything new thematically here, because we sort of got the idea that it doesn't give a fuck, basically. Like, he literally broke his promises and his condition that he himself set up multiple times. So, yeah. But still a good track, I think. Then, next track is Let You Win. Win here is like spelled as W, then there's a dash, and then there's IN. So I'm not exactly sure if it's supposed to be within as well. I don't know. But either way, this is a great turning point, I think, thematically and story-wise. She questions why should she let him win, basically, right? That's the whole point of the song. How she did her best to protect his reputation and the children, while she put herself in the back burner for so long. She thinks about like how he took basically everything and was sort of unscathed by this whole situation at the beginning. Like, before, of course, she put him on blast now in this album, but prior to this, he sort of was unscathed, and all thanks to her, because she could have gone to the press and talked about it, or ended the marriage earlier or whatever, all that stuff. But she didn't. She tried to make this work. She tried to put herself through it. She tried to really mold herself to him. But now here she's saying, but why am I doing this? Like, why am I subjecting myself, putting myself on the back burner? I mean, I understand doing it for the children, of course, but also it's clear that this whole situation is just favoring him and letting him do whatever the fuck he wants, basically, without having her be secure in a relationship anymore, right? So this, again, the turning point, because this is the first time she sort of starts letting go of trying to appease him in that sense, and trying to please him. And she starts questioning, it's like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through this shit? Like, why am I still entertaining this whole situation? And it gets to the final track, basically, which is perfect, again, in terms of the progression of the story, which is called Fruity Loop, which is another favorite of mine as well. So in the song, she calls him a little boy looking for his mommy, playing with his toys, afraid of being alone. She basically reads him through filth in this fucking track. Sort of gets to the point that we're all wondering about, like, what pushed him to become like this? Why is he like this? And basically, she sort of thinks that he is a mother's boy who never got much attention as a kid or whatever, and he keeps on doing all this because he deeply wants to know that he's loved by everyone and all that stuff. Like, he's obsessed with receiving attention and all that stuff. So yeah, she finally breaks free from him, basically, in this track. Like, that's a good, perfect ending, I think, because she finally breaks free from him, and she realizes, I guess, the point here is that she realizes that it's all him. Like, it's all of these issues that she's talking about in the song are his issues. They're not theirs. I know that she thought it was supposed to be also her issues because they're married, but she can't change someone who is so deeply, flawed at this moment and never has done nothing to change, or has done nothing to protect the marriage to begin with, and doesn't give a crap about her, and has never done anything to better himself about this whole thing. She, you know, he's a flawed human, and he's stuck in this free loop of issues that he's never solved, basically, to begin with. She can't break the cycle as much as she tried unless he does it, and he doesn't respect her enough to do it, clearly. So she says, "Forever till you die, it's true." So good. The storytelling is like killing me. It's just so good, so well executed, and it's an incredible way of ending the album. She told us basically a full story of how this marriage basically dissolved, right, for the years, and the many different turning points. And again, what I find also very impeccable in the storytelling is that she reveals bits by bits through different songs, and then eventually gives you a clear picture of who he is as a character and who she is as a character, right? So yeah, and I mean, I think it does end on a good point, because basically she does sort of realize that she accepts the truth, which is basically that she can't change him. Like, he's just that much of a flawed man, and she's tried to do the best she could to hang on to him and to still appease him and please him as much as she could, and try to protect the children and try to protect the marriage as much as she could, but it just would never work, because he is fundamentally this type of person and hasn't done anything to change himself or protect this marriage, right? So yeah, how rare, I actually think, how rare is it that we get an album that has such a cohesive track list and tells your story front to back, it progresses the story front to back with each song, and each song is an addition in terms of the story to her previous one. And again, if you think about the fact that she wrote this in 10 days and recorded it in 10 days, is just mind-blowing and mind-boggling to me, because what the hell? What the hell? This is like real good skills, like incredible. Again, people are saying online this is her melodrama, her lemonade, and it sort of is. Like, it's just very, very, a very it's a deep cut, and it's like a very revealing album, and it's a very emotionally charged album, and it does also feel like a bit of a freeing moment for her towards the end, finally, because I think when sometimes, like, you want to consume, listen to an album because of how much you romanticize certain ideas and how much you romanticize pain. But I think also what's the good part about this album is that it does, in any event, provide you also with a solution and how to get out of this cycle of pain, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm so in awe of it. This is my, I would say, as of now, I mean, we have little left of the year, but this is my album of the year, I think. This is something that really I've been constantly thinking about, and hasn't really happened to me in a long while with an album, and it is such an honest album that really gets to the crux of the issue and really tells you a fully fledged story. Like, no one wants to no one wants to storytell these days anymore. How about that? Like, no one wants to do this anymore. And here she goes. Here comes Lily Allen out of nowhere and gives us this incredible gift. Just when I thought the music this year was shit, like nothing really incredibly captivating happened in music this year, here she comes towards the end of the year, saving everyone, I think. Just incredible. So good. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this review. I'll talk about the sponsor and then give you the goodbye, because although I do have songs of the week that I could talk about, I think there's quite a few tracks that I want to add to my songs of the week. But that, by the way, you can search on Spotify, the Overture Pop songs of the week -- whatever month and year we're in, and these songs will definitely go to the October playlist. But yeah, so see ya. once again, I want to thank the sponsor of this episode, Mantra Matcha, for sponsoring us and basically giving me more opportunities to talk about some of the best products that I really, really enjoy. That feeling when you want steady energy, no jitters, no crash, just clear focus, and that's exactly what Mantra Matcha provides. It offers super premium ceremonial matcha sourced straight from a private hillside farm in Uji, Japan. It's made from the youngest, most tender tea leaves, shade grown and stone ground to preserve all that vibrant color and smooth, naturally sweet flavor. Get this, ceremonial matcha has 137 times more antioxidants than regular green tea, supports heart health, boosts metabolism, and helps you feel calm and focused. Honestly, it's like basically wellness in a cup. But what really makes Mantra Matcha stand out are the 6 superfood infused flavors. You can try banana cacao matcha, strawberry lemon matcha, or cinnamon goji berry matcha. They even have a superfood berry ginger beet and rose hip dragon fruit. My favorite is the superfood berry ginger beet. And well, I really also enjoyed the strawberry lemon matcha, specifically if you want a bit of a summer flavor now that we are approaching the very cold winter. Each one is packed with clean organic ingredients like turmeric, ginger, goji berries for extra nutrients and flavors. It's all organic, no GMO, gluten-free, zero sugar, so it fits right into any clean lifestyle you could have, any diet. So enjoy it hot, iced, or in any smoothie, just the way you would prepare any matcha. And here's something that I really, really enjoy, and it really always makes me want to go back to this provider specifically. The part of the money that Mantra Matcha earns from this helps provide a meal to a child in need through No Kid Hungry, which is of course a non-profit organization. So head over to mantramatcha.com. It's mantra MANTRA matcha.com and use my promo code Overshare Pamphlet for the IS exclusive discount they offer anywhere. Fuel your focus, boost your mood, and make Mantra Matcha part of your daily ritual. Trust me, your mind and body will thank you.